Welcome, everybody. The main theme of this speech is indigenous North American sacred symbols from the perspective of comparative religions and philosophies. This is a title a little long, I know. According to our purpose, we need to define first what we understand for a symbol, define indigenous North American religions, and define the basis for comparison we are using. So let's proceed. First, the Homo symbolicus, the man of symbols. It is the sort of human proper of religion. In ancient religious thought, the religious symbol a downward manifestation of the transcendency of Godhead, of ineffable essence. Symbols are worldly things expressing what must not be said, in the words of T.S. Eliot. If this is a consequence of anthropological, psychological, or ontological common structures, that is not properly related to this speech. The psychological or ontological common structures um, made a sort of universal grammar. So universal symbols have very precise equivalents in most traditional religions. They are synthetic conceptions of reality. They unite our fragmentary minds. In the words of Berkeley, they are the language that an infinite spirit speaks to finite spirits. The dark counterpart of symbols, as you may see here, is a sign. A sign is not universal, but particular. It is not based on objectivity, but in subjectivity. They are not part of a grammar, but pure man-made conventions. The replacement of symbols with sign is a modern temptation, and we may also say pathology, of contemporary religion. Second, the inevitable presence of these symbolic structures in native North American religion is our main focus. Not only those common to all native people, but those symbols who admit comparison with other religions of the world. We are conscious that the world religion in its strict sense may not be proper to describe the spiritual phenomenon of Native American people. Here we understood religion on its broad sense, a traditional way of life rooted in spirituality and transcendency. As we may see here, according to the classification of religion of William Stoddard, the genus of indigenous North American religions is Hyperborean shamanism, that is, the northern shamanism. The other species under this genus are Siberian shamanism, Taoism, Confucianism, Bon, the traditional religion of Tibet, and Shintoism. So, according to this, it is very probable that they share clear symbolical components, not only by analogy, but by identity, at least in a phenomenological way. What is common to these apparently non-related traditions? First, we may say that shamanistic component is common to all of them, even if there is not so much evident in some cases, just like in Taoism and Confucianism, due to their historical development and the peculiarities of Chinese civilization. More important is the conception of theophany. Theophany is the manifestation of sacred, of divine. This manifestation happens in an ontological place, not neatly in a spatial place. The place of theophany is relevant because it delimitates the main source of symbols for a religious tradition. For example, in Christianity, the place of theophany is the person of Jesus Christ, so his acts, life, and death are projected symbolically upon rituals and prayers. In Judaism, the place of theophany is the Torah. In Islam, the Holy Quran. For Northern Shamanism, the place of theophany is nature. Nature considered in the sense of natural environment, and this explains the abundant presence of animal and vegetal symbolism in these religions, everyday symbolical events and quotidian symbolical things. but also nature in the sense of essence and essential. And this explains the constant presence and interaction with the spiritual world. So, to sum up, most of symbols are extracted from nature. This will be our first approach. Furthermore, we may search the analogous symbolic structures in other religious genus, such Abrahamic or Aryan religions. Sometimes we shall find a symbolic identity, but in most cases we shall find a relation of symbolic analogy. This will be our secondary approach. Under this methodological perspective, now we'll try to show you an approach to apply this common symbolic grammar. We have selected three symbols using two criteria. First, the importance to native North American religions. Second, we have tried to include symbol static and dynamic. So the symbols chosen are the smoke hole, the prayer stick, and the ceremony of sacred pipe. That is a generic symbol, a symbolic artifact, and a ritual, that is a symbol in action. Let's see in first place the smoke hole. As you may see in the photograph, the smoke hole is that hole at the top of the teepee. First of all, we must consider that a smoke hole is not properly a thing. In fact, it is a hole. That is the lack of something. So, not only the present, but the absence may be a symbolic reality. The smoke hole of a traditional tent is a sacred spot, some sort of central point in the world. According to Ananda Kentish Kumaraswamy, this is an axis mundi, the world axis. The shaman traversing this axis mundi may gain access to the world of spirits, which is the real and archetypical world. So the smoke hole acts as a gate between this world and the spiritual world. It is a two-direction gate because also spirits may descend to earth. For instance, in the great feast for the death of the Ute people of Alaska, the spirit of the dead are invited into the Kaskik through the smoke hole. The Kaskik is a common house for the gathering of men. When a person dies, the body is also lifted out through the smoke hole and carried to the burial place. This is not a symbol strange to traditional European mind. The famous Oculus in the dome of Pantheon in Rome also had the symbolic use. The dome is in the heaven, and the oculus is the gate open, communicating both worlds, celestial and terrestrial. As we may see here, the ray of light penetrating through the oculus is a sort of heliophany, a manifestation of the god sun. In the words of David Herstrom, quote, "According to the ancients, the sun is the eye of Zeus, and in this pantheon, the oculus light is the epiphany of this greatest of God. The merged oculus light and the sun god held a supreme position because of light's unity and power." Unquote. Well, even in our days, after the Catholic Mass for the Feast of Pentecost, rose petals are dropped into the pantheon through its oculus as a symbol of the descent of the Holy Spirit. This is a perfect example of analogical symbolic adaptation in different religious traditions. A gate is open with divine world, and the god descends through the central hole, through the axis mundi, manifesting himself and blessing earth. In all popular European beliefs, when a witch prepares for the Sabbath after using the flying ointment or her body, she flies, being body or spirit, through the chimney. Back in America, that is, in the southwestern of the United States, in Navajo witchcraft practices, witches climb on top of tents and peer down through the smoke hole to harm their unfortunate victims. Also, in Tlingit stories, in southeast of Alaska and western Canada, Smokehole is related to actions of witchcraft. This axis mundi allows not only the heavenly ascension, but also the infernal descension, the blessing and the cursing, the divine and the diabolical. It is a neutral door for the supernatural. Again, in the Chukchi people of Siberia, the shaman soul follows the smoke of central fires through the smoke hole of the yurta, the traditional tent, gaining access to superior world. Also, deceased bodies are carried out of the tent through the smoke hole. This symbol appears in Mongolian shamanism in an almost identical way. The secret history of Mongols refer that Alan Ko, a maiden ancestor of Genghis Khan, was visited every night by a yellow man who entered her tent through the smoke hole, and after rubbing her belly, slipped out of the tent in the form of a yellow dog. Curiously, this community of symbols applies even to the shape of descending spirits. In Aztec or Nahuatl belief, it is precisely a yellow dog who carries the souls of the dead into the underworld. Second, the prayer stick. The prayer stick, as you may see in the photograph, is a highly symbolic artifact. Usually, this object is referred to Pueblo people of New Mexico and Arizona, but in fact, there are analogous objects used in nearly all North American tribes, such Navajo, Apache, Pawnee, Cheyenne, Kickapoo, and Inuit. This artifact is a stick painted, usually in blue or green, and carved, and have, of course, feathers attached. This kind of feathers varies depending on the sort of prayers, its purpose, and the rank of the offerer. Prayers stick are consecrated with medicine, sprinkled with sacred meal, and fumigated with tobacco. Prayers are instilled into them along this process, so the prayer stick is used to reinforce the offering and prayer to God and spirits. But it is not only a tool for prayer, it is the prayer itself. The symbol extends its potency to the use. It dominates the complete thing. Symbol transform the tool in an spiritual acting artifact, and of course a praying one. For example, this ancient Zuni offering chant says, "May our Mother Earth be covered in a fourfold mantle of white flour. May be covered with the flower of frost. May there, in every most covered mountain, the forest enfold each other with cold. May their arms be broken with the snow, for the earth to remain so. I have carved my prayer sticks in the form of living beings." We may find an analogous artifact in a completely different culture and civilization, the Ainu people in the north of Japan and Russian Isles. They are direct descendants of the Jomon prehistoric culture. The ikupa sui is a carved stick used in religious rituals of offering to spirits. It has no feathers attached, but the wood is carved with different designs according to the spirit and the offerer. The end of the stick is called the tongue. This is the symbolic and talkative part which, after being moistened with sake, speaks the prayer to the spirits. So the ikupasui, as the American prayer stick, is also the prayer in itself. Both of them are some sort of little axis mundi connecting the different worlds. The fact that both are made of wood configures them as a kind of world tree, a central spot, and a new creation. In shamanistic rituals of Buryats people in Russia, apparently there is no stick prayer, but the toibur or drumsticks occupy this function, receiving the symbolic qualities of praying objects, as we may see in this enchantment of toibur. My shaman's drumstick is ruled by Tolgo, the heavenly master, with 77 tongues. Listen to me, hear me well, hard times are here, for your humble children. Here is something to lean on, to drum with, the shaman's drumstick. Then they can get up on their feet and stand. Tolgo, the heavenly master, unleash your 77 tongue and descend. I offer you a strong dark wine. Accept it with joy. The god is asked to unleash his 77 tongues through the drumstick. As in Ikupasui, here we find a speaking offering tongue, only changes the direction of prayer. In Ikupasui, the prayer of the tongue is ascending to the god. In the Toibur, the tongue is speaking the words of the god, making it present in the earth and producing the intended effect of the ritual. In this case, the ritual is a shanar, a dedication ceremony for a shaman. It brings protection for the shaman and an offering the shaman brings to his ancestor spirit. When the calling of a spirit is performed, they come to a special tree, the serge tree. Following the symbolic association, the ritual objects used as the toibur are magically imitating the world tree, or axis mundi, to operate through this. As in the case of a smokehole, praying stick tries to guide the spiritual influence by opening a gate between different ontological planes. Of course, related to this is perhaps the most famous praying artifact in the world, that is the prayer wheel of Tibetan Buddhism. As those previously referred, the prayer wheel is the prayer itself. This artifact is a metal wheel spinning around a center. This center, no need to say, is, again, a central axis mundi. It has written a mantra, that is, sacred words. These sacred words are ascending or descending through the axis mundi, the central axis mundi, constantly recreating the world. Usually, the mantra is Om Mani Padme Hum, the mantra of compassion. Spinning the wheel produces the same merit of recitation, even allowing to realize enlightenment. Third, we have the smoking ceremonies, particularly the sacred pipe. In North America, the smoke ceremony is practically synonymous with the sacred pipe ritual. The Calumet ritual, in its generic form, starts with the insertion of the pipe stem in the bowl, as we may see in the photograph. The stem is a male symbol, representing male energy and creativity, and the channel for the offering. Of course, by implication, the bowl is a female symbol. Under a Hindu perspective, this would be the union of Purusha and Prakriti. In ancient Greek philosophy, it would be the equivalent of essence and substance, form and matter. This allowed the return of individual to the perfect forms, to the archetypic man, the macroanthropos, as we may see in this O say chant. Look at this pipe, actually is a man. I have put all my being inside of it. You too put your being inside of it, and you will be free from all that comes with death. After that, the sacred pipe acquires power and potency. In a certain way, the symbolic copulation means a new genesis, a recreation of the world, and the possibility of alter it. This act creates a sacred time and space in the place of ritual. Again, here we got the sacred center and the axis mundi. Then an offering of tobacco is made, and 6 pinches are dedicated to 4 directions and the sky and earth. This is reinforced by pointing the direction with the pipe stem. Then comes the smoking and blowing towards the spirit. This creates communion between the spirit and the smoker, but also between the participant of this communal ritual. Furthermore, a pact made in this solemn occasion is always considered holy and unbreakable. Using Catholic terminology, we could speak of a sacrament acting ex opere operato. This comparison is not as remote as it could seem. In Lakota people, the sacred pipe usually has 7 circles on it, representing the 7 sacred rites. Those are keeping of the soul, rite of purification, crying for a vision, sun dance, making relative ceremony, girls' puberty rite, the throwing of the ball. As you all know, Catholic sacrament also are fixed in number of 7. This exact numeric coincidence is important, but it is more important that this numerus clausus, the pre-established number of sacred rites, indicates the less important of pure subjectivity in the celebration. The rite is objective, and so are their effects. The inner disposition of participant, although extremely important, does not alter the performing of the rite. Nonetheless, the rites produce also subjective and inner effects. In Lakota rites, the external efficacy is reinforced with the holy binding of pacts and agreements, henceforth made unbreakable. And this is the ex opere operato aspect of rite. There is also a smoking ceremony among Aboriginal Australians, but it is quite different. Since no sacred pipes are used, there is no artifact to establish the sacred center, probably because its symbology and function is displaced to the plant itself, generally Eremophilia longifolia, an autochthonous plant. Leaves are placed around a sacred fire toward the four directions. Then, in the words of Sally May, quote, Aboriginal law business takes place where all concern of all participants are expressed. After all business concern are decided, leaves are placed on the sacred fire for smoking of all the participants. Unquote. The purpose of ceremony is purification, cleanse places and people of bad spirits, and of course prosperity. This admits several variations according to the goal. In funeral ceremonies, the fire is lit near the grave site and the smoke is directed toward participants. In maternity ceremonies, smoke is directed to newborn and mother. We may find several similarities in the symbolic structures of sacred pipe and smoking ceremonies. In both, a sacred spatial center is created, one through the union of the stem and bowl of the sacred pipe, other through the sacred fire. Both plants, tobacco and Eremophila, are initially disposed and offered to the four directions of space, just like an irradiation from the sacred center. Whether spirits or participant, in both ceremonies, smoke is directed to the subject receiver of its effect. Briefly summarized, there are 3 conclusions. First, there is a symbolic grammar, and through comparison we may find some common meanings. Second, symbols of a smokehole, prayer stick, and sacred pipe creates a sacred center. They are configured as axis mundi, connecting the upper world and earth. Third, the smokehole have equivalents in Asia and Europe, prayer stick in Japan, Russia, and conceptually at least, in Tibet. Smoking ceremony admits an structural similitude with Australia, so the meaning of these symbols is not necessarily limited by geographical, cultural, or religious environment. And that is all. I hope you have enjoyed this speech. I remain at your entire disposal for any further question. Thank you very much for your attention.